Hey y'all, this is part 2 of 3 for the amphibian notes for Honored Zoology. We're going to start off with talking about the feeding of amphibians. So, for feeding, tadpoles are going to be filter feeders or herbivores, and they're going to graze on algae. Adults, amphibians, are going to strictly be carnivores. And with feeding comes a little bit about the digestive system. We're not going to get into a lot of detail, but they do have a cloaca, which we've talked about with other groups of animals. The cloaca is where the digestive waste, urine, eggs, or sperm are going to leave the body, and you'll see that when we hopefully dissect the frog. Right. Some amphibians are going to have teeth. They're going to have maxillary teeth, which are small cone-shaped teeth around the upper edge of the jaw. And then some will also have vulmonar teeth, which are found on the roof of the mouth. So if you'll place your tongue to the roof of your mouth and now picture feel around like there'd be teeth there, be a very weird experience, right? There are no teeth on the lower jaw. So like we have upper and lower teeth, they're only going to have upper teeth. And their teeth are only going to be used mainly to catch and hold on to prey as they swallow them whole. Their teeth are not designed for chewing because they don't chew their food. Our teeth, however, are designed for both like biting into food and chewing our food. Frog teeth are simply there just to grab onto prey and help them push that food down their throat. All right, moving on to vision. The vision for amphibians. Their eyes are going to be covered with a transparent movable membrane, which is called a nictitating membrane. This is mainly there to give protection and also help keep the eye moist. And you can see that here in this picture, the eye is going to, this thing right here will move up like an eyelid and cover the eye. And you might have seen that if you are big into like nature documentaries or things like that. They might have done a close-up shot of that. Right. Next up for senses is hearing. Amphibians are going to have a tympanic membrane, which looks like a little drum or circle on the outside of their head. They're going to have one on each side of their head. Normally, it's right behind the eye. And the tympanic membrane is going to pick up vibrations and then send them to the inner ear, where then they'll send it onto the brain to figure out. The brain then deciphers it and figures out what's going on and what they're hearing. Right. For communication, frogs and toads are going to produce a rich variety of sounds or calls or songs during courtship and mating rituals. These callers are usually going to be the males making all the noise. And scientists believe that there's 3 main reasons for them to make such noises. One is going to be to say where they're located. 2 is going to be that they're ready to mate. And then 3 is going to be their willingness to defend their territory. Right. The calls will differ from species to species. Some calls will be extremely loud and they can be heard up to a mile away versus some others won't be as loud. Calls are made by passing air through the larynx in the throat, and then the vocal sac, which is that bubble you see when you think of a frog, which is a membrane under the throat or on the corner of the mouth that's going to expand, and that vocal sac, as it expands, it amplifies the sound. So the vocal sacs distend or expand during the amplification of the call. And you can see that here on this frog right here is the vocal sac. Right. Moving on to poisons. Many frogs will contain mild toxins that make them unpalatable or taste terrible to potential predators. It can also, possibly kill off a predator. So all toads are going to have a large poison gland, and it's called a parotoid gland, and it's located right behind the eye on the top of the head. It's this large bump right here on this guy, and then right here on this guy. Toads in Georgia do have these parotoid glands, of course, so if you ever see a frog in your yard, you can look for that large bump behind their eyes. It's on each side of the head, and that's where their poison is contained. So depending on the species of toad or frog, depends on what kind of poison is in it. There's 4 main groups that scientists have figured out are in frogs. So the first one that they might have is a hallucinogen, which will cause changes in perception, thought, emotion, or consciousness. Really things that just mess with your brain and makes you hallucinate. The second type is convulsants, which will cause seizures. Then there's neurotoxins, which act specifically on the nerve cells, including paralysis. And then the last one is vasoconstrictors, which causes the constriction of blood flow. And that prefix vaso is normally means like your blood system, like veins and stuff. And then constrict means to tighten. So constriction or tightening of blood flow. So if it was on the opposite side, a vasodilator, that prefix vaso is going to deal with blood, and then dilators means it's going to be like, instead of constrict, it's going to like open it up. But that's not one that frogs have. All right. So some frogs, such as poison dart frogs, are especially toxic. These guys are native to Central and South America, and these guys are normally called dart frogs. We believe the origin came from people using their toxic secretion in the to poison the tips of blow darts. Um, Although all poison dart frogs are at least somewhat toxic in the wild, their levels of toxicity vary considerably from one species to the next and from one population to the next. So there's not really a consistency among them of just how poison they'll be. But their warning coloration, no matter how toxic they are, gives a good indication of predators to stay away. Okay. Moving on to habitats. The habitats that we see amphibians have mostly are going to be arboreal, meaning they're going to live in trees, terrestrial, mainly living on land, and I mean trees are on land, but a little differently. And then aquatic, meaning they're going to live in freshwater. No amphibians are going to be considered marine, meaning they're not going to live in saltwater. Okay. And then the difference between frogs and toads. Frogs are typically going to be strong, long-webbed, have strong, long-webbed hind feet. They're going to be adapted for leaping, swimming, and climbing. They're going to be aquatic or at least semi-aquatic. They're going to have smooth skin that's very moist, and they're going to tend to lay eggs in clusters. All right, so these are some pictures of frogs. And then toads are going to be a little different looking. They're going to typically be terrestrial, live in drier climates, and have drier, warty skin, so they're going to be real bumpy. Their stubby bodies are going to have short hind limbs, and they're going to do short hops or walks, and they don't really leap like a frog will. And then toads also are going to have that parotoid gland behind their eye, and they're going to lay eggs in long chains like this right here, instead of in clusters. All right. For salamanders and newts are in the order Caudata, which is the cauda part of that means tail, and ata means to bear, so they bear a tail. For salamanders, they're going to live in a moist forest floor litter and have aquatic larvae. And newts are going to live mostly in the water, and they're going to retain a caudal fin on their tail. So you can see that right here on this guy's tail has that fin versus a salamander's not. And then the last thing for this video is Caecilians, and they are going to be in the order Gymnophiona. Gymnos meaning naked, and Ophionis meaning like a snake. So they kind of look like a snake, but they're not technically a snake. They are very worm-like also, and they burrow, and they feed on worms and other invertebrates. And their skin is covers their eyes, and they are nearly blind. So they're just like a blind, weird worm, snake-like thing. Very strange creature. Anyway, that is it for part 2.